When a reclusive farmer's secret identity as a best-selling romance author is revealed, the woman who unknowingly inspired every love story must decide if she's ready to live the one written just for her. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The morning sun peeked through the blinds of Willow Creek Veterinary Clinic as Dr. Evelyn Hart finished her first cup of coffee. At 39, she had built the practice from nothing into the most respected animal hospital in 3 counties. The clinic walls were covered with thank you cards and photos of the pets she had saved over the years. "Good morning, Dr. Hart," chirped Maggie, the front desk receptionist. "You're in early again." Evelyn nodded, already flipping through the day's appointments. "The Andersons' cat needs her stitches checked, and we've got 3 vaccinations scheduled before noon. And don't forget, Lucas Hale called. His dog Daisy is limping again." Evelyn paused, her pen hovering over the schedule. "Fit him in at 4. "You always make time for the sweet potato guy," Maggie teased with a knowing smile. "I make time for his dog," Evelyn corrected. But there was a hint of color in her cheeks she couldn't quite hide. The morning passed in a blur of wagging tails and concerned pet owners. Evelyn moved through her appointments with practiced efficiency, her touch gentle with the animals, but her manner direct with their owners. She had learned years ago that sugarcoating a diagnosis didn't help anyone. People appreciated her honesty, even if some found her a bit cold at first. At precisely 4 o'clock, the bell above the door jingled, and Lucas Hale stepped inside. His faded flannel shirt had seen better days, and his work boots tracked a bit of farm dirt onto the clean floor. In his arms, he cradled Daisy, his golden retriever, who looked up at Evelyn with pleading brown eyes. "Sorry about the mess," Lucas said in his quiet way, nodding toward the floor. "The floor's seen worse," Evelyn assured him, already reaching for Daisy. "What happened this time?" "Found her limping after she chased a squirrel through the east field. She's favoring her left front paw." Evelyn led them to the exam room, her professional mask firmly in place despite the strange flutter in her stomach. She had treated hundreds of dogs over the years, but something about the way Lucas Hale looked at his pet always caught her attention. The tenderness in his eyes revealed a depth that his quiet demeanor often hid. "Let's take a look, girl," she murmured to Daisy, gently examining the paw. The dog whimpered slightly, but stayed still, trusting the doctor completely. "Nothing broken," Evelyn announced after a careful examination. "Looks like she's got a thorn embedded in her pad. I'll have it out in a minute." As she worked, she was acutely aware of Lucas standing nearby, his tall frame leaning against the examination table, his calloused farmer's hands gentle as they stroked Daisy's head. "You're good with her," he observed. "Most vets can't handle her without a muzzle." "We understand each other," Evelyn replied, focused on the delicate extraction. "Animals know when you respect them." With a quick, skilled movement, she removed the thorn and cleaned the small wound. As she straightened up, a strand of her dark hair fell across her face. Before she could brush it back, Lucas reached forward, tucking it gently behind her ear. The moment hung between them, unexpected and electric. Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat, Evelyn forgot about the clinic, the other waiting patients, everything except the warmth of his fingers and the surprising softness in his gaze. She laughed nervously, breaking the spell. "I'll bandage this up, keep it clean and dry for 2 days, then let her go without it. No chasing squirrels until the weekend." Lucas nodded, withdrawing his hand slowly. "I appreciate you fitting us in." "It's my job," she said, the automatic response falling from her lips. But they both knew it was more than that. In 5 years, she had never turned away Lucas or Daisy, no matter how full her schedule. After they left, Maggie poked her head in. "The sweet potato guy looks better every time he comes in. When are you going to put that man out of his misery and say yes to dinner?" "Don't start," Evelyn warned, though without real heat. "Lucas Hale is a client, nothing more." "Sure, and I'm the Queen of England," Maggie laughed. "That man has been bringing his perfectly healthy dog in for checkups for years just to see you." "Daisy had a thorn in her paw," Evelyn protested. "Convenient," Maggie winked, retreating before Evelyn could argue further. Alone in the exam room, Evelyn surprised herself by touching her ear where Lucas's fingers had been. Ridiculous, she thought, shaking her head. A 42-year-old farmer with dirt under his nails and a dog who couldn't stay out of trouble. Definitely not her type. Not after David had left her 5 years ago, claiming she was too cold and married to her work. The memory still stung, though less sharply now. David had wanted a wife who would put his needs first, who would give up her practice to follow his career. When she refused, he'd found someone who would. The last she heard, they had 3 children and lived in Seattle. She had sworn off relationships after that disaster. Her work was enough. It had to be. Lucas Hale's pickup truck rattled down the dirt road toward his farm as the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the fields. Beside him, Daisy sat with her bandaged paw carefully held up, looking quite pleased with all the attention. "You're milking this, aren't you, girl?" he murmured, and she thumped her tail against the seat in response. The small farmhouse came into view, its weathered white paint glowing in the sunset. Behind it stretched rows of sweet potatoes, his main crop and the source of his nickname in town. People said Lucas Hale grew the sweetest potatoes in 3 states, and they weren't wrong. What they didn't know was that farming was only half his life. Inside the modest house, Lucas settled Daisy in her bed near the fireplace and headed straight for his study. The room was small but comfortable, with bookshelves lining the walls and a solid oak desk positioned to catch the morning light. On the desk sat a laptop, far newer and more expensive than anything else he owned. He sat down and opened it, fingers hovering over the keyboard as his mind replayed the moment in the clinic. Evelyn's surprised eyes when he touched her hair, the slight catch in her breath that he was almost certain he hadn't imagined. With a deep breath, he began to type. She moved through the room like a storm barely contained, all precision and purpose until that single strand of hair fell across her face. In that unguarded moment, as he reached to brush it away, he glimpsed something behind her practiced defenses, a flicker of the warmth she hid from the world, a hint of the woman beneath the doctor's cool exterior. The words flowed easily now, as they always did when he wrote about her. Under the pen name Thomas Wells, Lucas had published 6 romance novels, each one a bestseller. His publisher had been after him for years to do publicity, but he had always refused. His privacy was non-negotiable. The heroine in every book, whether she was a detective, a chef, or in his latest a wildlife photographer, always had the same dark hair and determined hazel eyes as Dr. Evelyn Hart. And the hero, though his profession changed, was always a quiet man who loved her from afar, gathering courage in small moments over cups of coffee and chance encounters. His latest novel, Whispers Across the Field, had just hit the bestseller list. It told the story of a woman who photographed wild horses and the ranch owner who silently loved her, while she was too busy chasing freedom to notice the home waiting right in front of her. Lucas wrote late into the night, the scene in the veterinary clinic transforming on the page. In real life, he had managed only the smallest gesture. In his novel, the hero finally found the courage to say what was in his heart, words Lucas had never said aloud. "You have to read this," said Helen, Evelyn's oldest friend, pushing a paperback across the diner table the next morning. "I couldn't. Put it down." Evelyn looked skeptically at the book. The cover showed a silhouette of a woman with a camera standing in a field at sunset. Whispers Across the Field by Thomas Wells. "Another romance novel?" she asked, taking a sip of her coffee. "You know I don't read those anymore." "This one's different," Helen insisted. "The main character reminds me of you, stubborn, independent, married to her career. And the guy isn't some perfect fantasy man. He's real, with dirt under his nails. And insecurities. Just read the first chapter." Evelyn sighed but tucked the book into her bag. Helen had been trying to fix her love life since high school, but she meant well. Later that night, curled up on her couch with a glass of wine and her cat Rex purring beside her, Evelyn opened the novel, expecting the same unrealistic fluff that had soured her on romance years ago. Instead, she found herself drawn into the story of Valerie, a wildlife photographer who used her camera as a shield against intimacy. The prose was simple but touched something deep inside her. By the time she reached the 3rd chapter, where Valerie meets rancher Matthew Sterling, Evelyn felt an uncomfortable prickle of recognition. Matthew was described as a man of few words, but deep thoughts whose hands told the story his voice rarely shared. He had a golden retriever named Princess who was always getting into trouble, and he grew vegetables that he quietly donated to the local food bank. The scene where they first meet, Princess had cut her paw on barbed wire, and Matthew sought out Valerie, who was known to help injured animals, was so familiar that Evelyn nearly dropped the book. "This is ridiculous," she told Rex, who blinked at her indifferently. "It's just a coincidence." But as she continued reading, the similarities piled up. Valerie's habit of tucking her hair behind her ear when concentrating, the way she spoke, softly to animals, but directly to people. Even her favorite coffee, black with 1 sugar, matched Evelyn's own. By midnight, she had finished the book, her heart racing with confusion and a strange sense of exposure. The final scene where Matthew finally tells Valerie that he's been silently loving her through all their brief encounters left her with tears she couldn't explain. Was it possible? Could Lucas Hale, the quiet farmer who brought his dog in for the smallest ailments, be Thomas Wells? No, she decided, closing the book firmly. She was being fanciful, seeing connections that weren't there because Helen had put the idea in her head. Lucas Hale was just a kind, simple farmer who happened to own a golden retriever. Nothing more. But that night she dreamed of fields at sunset and words whispered in a voice that sounded remarkably like Lucas's. The next day brought an emergency that pushed the book and its unsettling similarities from Evelyn's mind. A local farmer called in a panic. His pregnant cow was in distress and it looked like a difficult birth was imminent. "I'm on my way," Evelyn said, already grabbing her emergency kit. "Keep her calm and don't try to move her." She drove her truck out to the Peterson farm, mentally reviewing the possible complications and treatments. This was where she felt most confident, in crisis, making split-second decisions that could save a life. To her surprise, when she arrived at the barn, she found Lucas Hale already there, his truck parked haphazardly, as if he'd arrived in a hurry. "Doctor Hart?" He nodded, his expression grim. "Jim called me first since I was closer. It doesn't look good." Inside the barn, the cow lay on her side, clearly in distress. Jim Peterson hovered nervously, his weathered face creased with worry. "She's been down for an hour," he explained. "Started having contractions this morning, but nothing's happening." Evelyn moved quickly, examining the animal with practiced hands. "The calf is turned. We're going to have to reposition it." For the next 2 hours, she worked alongside Lucas, who seemed to know exactly what she needed before she asked. They moved in a strange harmony, speaking little but accomplishing much. His hands were steady as he helped her guide the calf into the correct position for birth. When the newborn finally slid into the world, both Evelyn and Lucas were covered in sweat and other things best not mentioned, but the sight of the calf taking its first breath made it worthwhile. "She's beautiful," Jim said, his voice thick with emotion as the mother cow began to lick her baby clean. Evelyn stepped back, suddenly aware of how close she was standing to Lucas, their shoulders nearly touching as they watched the new life they had helped bring into the world. "You've done this before," she said, "not a question but an observation." Lucas nodded. "Grew up on this farm, my father taught me." "You never mentioned it." He shrugged, a small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You never asked." There it was again, that current of electricity when their eyes met, stronger now after working together in crisis. "I should get back to the clinic," she said, breaking the moment. "I could use some coffee first," Lucas replied, surprising her with his directness. "Jim's wife makes the best coffee in the county." Before she could form an excuse, Jim was already ushering them toward the house. "Least I can do after you saved my cow and calf. Martha's got fresh pie too." Seated at the Petersons' kitchen table, Evelyn found herself studying Lucas in a new light. His hands, strong enough to help deliver a calf, yet gentle enough to tuck a strand of hair behind her ear, cupped his coffee mug carefully. He spoke little, but when he did, his words carried weight. "How long have you been farming?" she asked. "Genuinely curious now." "All my life," he answered. "Took over from my father when he got sick about 10 years ago. And before that, a flicker of something, caution, crossed his face. Studied English in college. Thought I might teach." "Why?" "Didn't you?" He was quiet for a moment, considering. "Life takes unexpected turns sometimes. Their conversation was interrupted by Jim's wife, Martha, bringing a second slice of apple pie for Lucas. "Your sweet potatoes are the best thing that happened to my baking," she declared. "This year's crop is even better than last." Lucas thanked her with his characteristic modesty, and they finished their coffee in comfortable silence. As they walked to their trucks afterward, Evelyn found herself reluctant to leave. Something about today had shifted the ground between them, moving them from client and doctor to something else, something she wasn't quite ready to name. "Thanks for your help with the calf," she offered. Lucas nodded. "Anytime." Then, after a moment's hesitation, "Daisy would love a visit if you ever have time. She misses you between emergencies." The invitation hung in the air, simple and yet loaded with possibility. "Maybe I will," Evelyn heard herself say, and the smile that spread across Lucas's face made her heart beat a little faster. As she drove back to town, her mind kept returning to the book hidden in her bedside drawer, and the growing suspicion that the man who wrote it might be the same one who had just invited her to visit his farm. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. Week passed before Evelyn found the courage to take Lucas up on his invitation. She told herself it was professional interest, checking on Daisy's paw, but the butterflies in her stomach suggested otherwise. The Hale farm sat on 50 acres just outside town, a picturesque plot with rolling hills and neat rows of crops. As Evelyn pulled up the gravel driveway, she noticed the careful maintenance of the place. The freshly painted fence, the well-tended garden beds, the clean windows of the modest farmhouse. Lucas emerged from the barn as she parked, wiping his hands on a rag. He looked genuinely surprised to see her, as if he hadn't really expected her to come, Dr. Hart, he said, that small smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Evelyn," she corrected him. "I think after delivering a calf together, we can use first names." His smile widened. "Evelyn, then, come to check on Daisy?" "That's right," she said, though they both knew the dog was fine. "And I thought I'd see these famous sweet potatoes for myself. You're just in time. I was about to make coffee." He gestured toward the house. "Unless you'd rather see the fields first." "Coffee sounds perfect." The inside of the farmhouse was a revelation. While the exterior was exactly what she'd expected, practical, simple, a working farmer's home, the interior told a different story. The living room walls were lined with bookshelves, filled not with farming manuals, but with novels, poetry collections, and literary classics. A comfortable reading chair sat by the window, with a small side table holding a stack of books and a notepad. Daisy bounded in from another room, her tail wagging frantically at the sight of Evelyn. The limp was completely gone. "Someone's feeling better," Evelyn laughed, kneeling to greet the excited dog. "She's been fine for days," Lucas admitted, heading toward what she assumed was the kitchen. Tough old girl. Left alone briefly, Evelyn couldn't resist scanning the bookshelves. Her eyes widened when she spotted all 6 Thomas Wells novels lined up neatly in a row. She reached for Whispers Across the Field, the one she had just read, pulling it out carefully. When she opened it, her heart nearly stopped. On the title page was a handwritten note. "For Elle, thank you for believing in these stories from the beginning. T.W." The handwriting matched exactly the neat script she had seen on Daisy's vaccination forms. "Milk and sugar?" Lucas called from the kitchen. Evelyn hastily returned the book to its place. "Black with 1 sugar," she called back, her mind racing. Lucas returned with 2 mugs of coffee and an easy manner that belied the secrets she now suspected he kept. They sat at the kitchen table, a warm sunlit space with views of the fields. "So," Evelyn began, trying to sound casual, "English major turned farmer. That's an unusual path." Lucas nodded, sipping his coffee. "Not as unusual as you might think. Farming gives you a lot of time to think. Long hours on the tractor, winter evenings when everything's quiet. And what do you think about during those hours?" she pressed. He looked at her then, really looked at her as if deciding something important. "Stories, mostly. The ones I've read. The ones I'd like to tell." Her heart pounded. "Do you ever write them down?" A long pause, then, "Sometimes." She could see him retreating, pulling back into his shell of privacy, and decided not to push further, at least not yet. Instead, she changed the subject. "Show me these sweet potatoes I've been hearing about for years." Relief crossed his features, and he led her outside to the fields. As they walked, he explained the growing process, the careful tending each plant required, the years of trial and error to develop his particular strain. His passion was evident in every word, his hands gesturing as he described the delicate balance of sun and water, the rich soil he had cultivated over years. "You love this," she observed. "I do," he agreed. "But it's not all I love." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning neither was quite ready to address. Instead, they continued walking, eventually circling back to the barn, where Lucas showed her the newborn kittens a stray cat had delivered in the hayloft 2 weeks before. "I'll need to find homes for them," he said as Evelyn gently examined each tiny creature. "Once they're weaned." "I can help with that," she offered, "and they'll need their first shots." "Another reason to visit the clinic," he said softly, and their eyes met over the box of kittens. The afternoon passed quickly, and before Evelyn realized it, the sun was setting. They ended up on his porch, watching the golden light fade over the fields. "I should go," she said reluctantly. "You could stay for dinner," Lucas suggested. "Nothing fancy, just soup and fresh bread." She hesitated, torn between the growing warmth she felt in his presence and the caution that had protected her heart for 5 years. "Another time," she finally said. "I have early appointments tomorrow." Was that disappointment in his eyes? He hid it quickly if it was, nodding in understanding. "The invitation stands any time." As she drove home, Evelyn couldn't shake the image of that signed book, or the way Lucas had almost but not quite admitted to being a writer. What would it mean if the quiet farmer was secretly Thomas Wells? And why had he made her, or someone, remarkably like her, the heroine of every story? Lucas watched Evelyn's truck disappear down the road, resisting the urge to call her back. He had nearly told her everything today, had been on the verge of confession several times. But something had held him back, fear maybe, or the memory of Rachel's laughter when she'd found his earliest attempts at writing romance. "Sweet potato farmers don't write love stories," she'd mocked. "Stick to what you know." She had left soon after, taking his confidence with her. It had taken years to start writing again, and when he did, he kept it secret. Only his agent and editor knew his real identity, and he intended to keep it that way. But Evelyn was different. The way she had looked at his bookshelves, the careful way she had asked about his writing, she suspected something. And strangely, the thought didn't terrify him as much as it once might have. Inside the house, he went straight to his study and opened his laptop. The words came easily tonight, fueled by the memory of Evelyn's smile as she held the kittens, the way the setting sun had caught in her dark hair as they stood on the porch. His current manuscript was nearly finished. The story of a veterinarian who specialized in large animals and the orchard owner who silently loved her. It was his most transparent work yet, barely fictional at all. If Evelyn ever read it, she would know immediately. Maybe that was the point. Maybe it was time to stop hiding behind fictional characters and find the courage to speak in his own. Voyat Lucas wrote deep into the night, finishing the novel just as dawn broke over the fields. He sent it to his editor with a brief note. "This is the last one. At least the last one I'll write in secret." Evelyn's visit to the farm changed something between them. Over the next few weeks, their paths crossed with increasing frequency. Lucas brought Daisy for a completely unnecessary nail trim. Evelyn found reasons to check on the kittens. They ran into each other at the farmer's market, where Lucas sold his sweet potatoes and Evelyn was shopping for weekend produce. Each encounter was charged with unspoken questions and growing attraction. They circled each other like cautious dancers, neither quite ready to take the lead. Then one stormy night in late October, Evelyn received an emergency call. A valuable horse at the Davidson estate was colicking, and the situation was critical. She drove through the pouring rain, mentally preparing for a difficult case. To her surprise, when she arrived at the Davidson stable, Lucas was already there. He stood by the horse's stall, speaking soothingly to the distressed animal. "What are you doing here?" she asked, quickly removing her wet coat. "Mrs. Davidson called me. I worked with horses before taking over the farm," he explained, stepping. Back to give her room to examine the animal. Thought I might be able to help until you arrived. They worked together through the night, walking the horse, monitoring vital signs, administering medication. In crisis, they moved as one, anticipating each other's needs without words. By morning, the horse was out of danger, grazing peacefully. In its stall, exhausted but relieved, they sat side by side on a hay bale, sharing the thermos of coffee Mrs. Davidson had brought them before returning to the house. "We make a good team," Evelyn said, too tired to maintain her usual guardedness. Lucas nodded, his shoulder warm against hers in the chilly barn. "We do." "You're full of surprises, Lucas Hale," she continued, turning to look at him. "Sweet potato. Farmer, horseman, cow midwife." She hesitated, then took the plunge. "Best-selling author?" The silence that followed seemed endless. Lucas stared into his coffee cup, his expression unreadable. For a moment, Evelyn thought she had made a terrible mistake. Then he looked up, his eyes meeting hers directly. "Yes, just that. One simple word that changed everything between them. I saw the signed copy at your house," she admitted. "And then I read the other books. The heroines. They're all me, aren't they?" Lucas set down his coffee cup, his hands suddenly restless. "Versions of you," he corrected softly. "The way I see you. Why would you write about me?" He was quiet for a long moment, gathering courage. "Because I've been in love with you since the first day I brought Daisy to your clinic 5 years ago. Because you're the most remarkable woman I've ever met. Because some things are easier to say on paper than in person." The confession hung in the air between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Evelyn felt her carefully constructed defenses crumbling in the face of such simple truth. "I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything," Lucas assured her. "I didn't write those books expecting anything in return. They were just a way to express what I felt, what I still feel." Before she could respond, Mrs. Davidson appeared at the barn door, offering them breakfast and breaking the moment. They accepted gratefully, the conversation shifting to safer topics as they ate in the Davidsons' warm kitchen. When it was time to leave, they walked to their trucks in awkward silence, the easy rapport of the night lost in the morning light. "Lucas," Evelyn began, not sure what she wanted to say. He stopped her with a gentle shake of his head. "It's okay, I've waited 5 years. I can wait longer." She watched him drive away, her emotions in turmoil. Lucas Hale loved her, had loved her for years, silently, patiently, expressing his feelings only through fictional characters who lived braver lives than he did. And the most confusing part, she wasn't running away from the knowledge as she would have expected. Instead, she found herself drawn toward it, curious and cautiously hopeful. The next week passed in a blur of appointments and emergencies, giving Evelyn little time to process her feelings about Lucas's confession. She threw herself into work, as she always did when emotions threatened to overwhelm her. But at night, alone in her quiet house, she found herself reaching for his books, rereading passages with new understanding. The heroes, always kind, patient men who loved from a distance, were clearly Lucas himself. And the heroines, strong, independent women who feared vulnerability, were mirrors reflecting her own fears back at her. On Friday evening, just as she was closing the clinic, the bell above the door jingled. She looked up, expecting a last-minute emergency, and instead saw Helen clutching a book to her chest, her expression eager. "Have you seen this?" she demanded, waving the book. "Thomas Wells has a new novel out. It just hit the shelves today, and I swear, Evelyn, this one is literally you. Not just similar, it's you." Evelyn's heart stuttered. "What do you mean?" Helen thrust the book into her hands. The cover showed a woman in a veterinarian's coat standing in a barn doorway, silhouetted against golden fields. The title read, "The Words He Never Said." "Read the dedication," Helen urged. With trembling fingers, Evelyn opened the book to the dedication page. "For E, the words are yours now, if you want them." "LL for Lucas," Helen said triumphantly. "I knew it. Thomas Wells is Lucas Hale. Everyone in town is talking about it. The publisher announced his real identity yesterday as part of the book launch. There's going to be a big interview on the morning show next week." Evelyn stared at the book in her hands, barely hearing Helen's excited chatter. Lucas had gone public. After years of hiding behind a pen name, he had revealed himself, and with a book that, according to Helen, was unmistakably about them. "I have to go," she said abruptly, grabbing her coat. "Where?" Helen called after her. "To talk to a sweet potato farmer," Evelyn replied, already halfway out the door. The drive to Lucas's farm seemed endless. Questions tumbled through her mind. Why? Now? What had changed? And what would happen once the whole world knew that quiet Lucas Hale was famous author Thomas Wells? When she finally pulled up to the farmhouse, the place was dark except for a single light in what she knew was his study. She sat in her truck for a long moment, gathering courage, before walking to the door and knocking firmly. Daisy's bark echoed, inside followed by footsteps. Then Lucas stood before her, looking tired and wary. "You went public," she said without preamble. He nodded, stepping back to let her in. "I did. Why now?" Lucas led her to the living room, where papers were scattered across the coffee table. What looked like interview requests, publishing contracts, promotional schedules. "Because I was tired of hiding," he said simply. "Tired of writing about brave men who speak their hearts when I couldn't do the same. But why reveal everything? Your identity, your feelings, the book is about us, isn't it?" He met her gaze steadily. "Yes. What happens when everyone reads it? When people in town realize that I've been in love with you for years?" he finished. "I don't care anymore, Evelyn. I've spent too long caring what people might think, how they might laugh at the farmer who thinks he can write romance novels, who thinks he deserves the town's most accomplished woman." The raw honesty in his voice silenced her protests. She sank onto the couch, the book still clutched in her hands. "I haven't read it yet," she said quietly. "It's our story," Lucas told, her sitting beside her but not touching. "Or the story we might have if you want it, and if I don't." The question came out harsher than she intended, born of fear rather than cruelty. Lucas flinched, but didn't look away. "Then that's your choice. I didn't write it to pressure you. I wrote it because it was the story in my heart, the one I needed to tell." Evelyn looked down at the book, running her fingers over the embossed title. "I'm not good at this, Lucas. Relationships, opening up. The last time I tried..." "I know about David," he said gently. "Small town." "Then, you know why I'm cautious." Lucas nodded. "Read the book, Evelyn, then decide. That's all I ask." She stood, suddenly needing space to think. "Your life is about to change. Once this interview airs, once people read this book, you won't be just the sweet potato guy anymore." "I know," he acknowledged, "but some things are worth the risk." The way he looked at her then, as if she were worth any risk, any change, made her breath catch. No one had ever looked at her quite like that before. "I'll read it," she promised, backing toward the door. "But I can't promise anything else." "I wouldn't ask you to," Lucas replied, following her to the porch. "I've learned patience over the years." As she drove away, Evelyn glanced in her rearview mirror. Lucas stood on the porch watching her leave, Daisy at his side, a tableau of quiet devotion that made her heart ache with possibilities she had denied herself for too long. At home, she poured a glass of wine, settled into her reading chair, and opened the book. From the first page, she was captivated. Lucas wrote with simple, honest prose that spoke directly to the heart. The story, their story, unfolded with all the complexity of real life and all the hope of fiction. She read, through the night, unable to put it down. When dawn broke, she turned the final page, tears streaming down her face. In the novel, the veterinarian and the farmer author found their way to each other, overcoming fear and past hurts to build something beautiful together. Was it possible in real life? Could she be as brave as her fictional counterpart? For the first time in 5 years, Evelyn allowed herself to truly imagine a future that included love, a future with Lucas. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating. Monday morning brought chaos to Willow Creek. The local bookstore had sold out of The Words He Never Said before noon. The diner buzzed with gossip about Lucas Hale, the quiet, sweet potato farmer who had been secretly writing best-selling romance novels for years. And everyone, absolutely everyone, was talking about Dr. Evelyn Hart, the obvious inspiration for the book's heroine. Evelyn arrived at the clinic to find Maggie fielding a record number of calls, many of them thinly veiled attempts to get information, far about her relationship with the town's newly discovered celebrity. Mrs. Jenkins wants to know if her cat really needs a checkup or if she's just trying to get gossip, Maggie whispered, covering the phone receiver. Tell her Mittens is due for vaccines, Evelyn replied, retreating to the safety of her office. She hadn't slept after finishing Lucas's book, her mind too full of questions and possibilities. She'd spent the weekend alternating between rereading favorite passages and pacing her house, arguing with herself about what to do next. The ringing of her cell phone interrupted her thoughts. Unknown number. Probably another gossip seeker. Dr. Hart? She answered professionally. Evelyn, it's Lucas. His voice sounded strained. I'm sorry to bother you at work, but have you seen the morning show? No, I've been busy with appointments. Why? A deep sigh came through the line. They moved the interview up. It aired an hour ago. Things are getting a bit intense. What do you mean? There are reporters at my farm, photographers, someone from a movie studio talking about rights. He paused. And they're asking about you a lot. Evelyn's stomach dropped. Lucas, I know this isn't what you signed up for, he interrupted gently. I told them I wouldn't discuss my personal life, but they figured it out anyway. The book, the town, the timing. It wasn't hard to connect the dots. Before she could respond, the clinic door burst open and Helen rushed in, breathless with excitement. Turn on the TV, she exclaimed. Lucas is on every channel, and he just said the most romantic thing about you on national television. I have to go, Evelyn told Lucas, her heart racing. We'll talk later. She hung up to find Maggie and Helen already crowded around the small television in the break room. On screen, a reporter stood outside Lucas's farmhouse where a crowd had gathered. Reclusive author Thomas Wells, revealed last week to be local farmer Lucas Hale, has taken the literary world by storm with his latest novel, the reporter was saying. Sources close to the author confirm that the book's heroine is based on local veterinarian Dr. Evelyn Hart, whom Hale has allegedly been in love with for years. The camera cut to footage from the morning show interview. Lucas sat uncomfortably in the studio, looking out of place in a new shirt and jeans. His usual flannel nowhere to be seen. Your book is being called the most romantic confession in literary history, the host was saying. Did you really write 6 novels about the same woman before telling her how you felt? Lucas shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable with the attention but determined to answer honestly. I've always been better at writing feelings than saying them aloud. The books were a way to express what I couldn't find the courage to say in person. And has she read them? Does she know they're about her? A small smile crossed Lucas's face. She knows now. And? The host pressed. And that's between us, Lucas said firmly. Would you say this is a modern fairy tale? The quiet farmer secretly penning best-selling love stories about the town veterinarian? Lucas considered this, his expression thoughtful. No, not a fairy tale. Real life doesn't work that way. Real love isn't about grand gestures or perfect timing. It's about patience, understanding, seeing someone for who they really are and loving them anyway, flaws and fears included. The host leaned forward eagerly. So you're saying you love Dr. Hart despite her flaws? I'm saying I love her because of them, Lucas replied simply. The strength she built from past hurts, the walls she put up to protect herself, even her stubborn independence, they're not flaws, they're who she is, and who she is extraordinary. Helen sighed dreamily as the clip ended. That is the most romantic thing I've ever heard. Evelyn stood frozen, Lucas's words echoing in her ears. No one had ever spoken about her like that before, with such deep understanding, such complete acceptance. There's more, Maggie said, pointing to the screen where the live report continued. Publishing insiders report that the bidding war for movie rights to the words he never said has hit 7 figures, with major stars already expressing interest in the lead roles. The publicity team for Thompson Films confirms they've reached out to both Hale and Dr. Hart for consultation on the adaptation. Evelyn reached over and switched off the television, her hands trembling slightly. Aren't you excited? Helen asked, bouncing on her toes. You're going to be famous. They'll make a movie about your love story. There is no love story, Evelyn said automatically, though the words rang hollow even to her own ears. And I have patients waiting. She escaped to the exam room, grateful for the distraction of a routine vaccination appointment. But as she worked through the day, her phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends, acquaintances, and even old classmates who had seen the story. By closing time, she felt besieged, her carefully ordered life suddenly thrown into chaos by Lucas's public declaration. Part of her was angry. He had exposed their private connection to the world without warning. But another part, a part she barely recognized, was touched beyond words by the simple honesty of his confession. He loved her, flaws, fears, and all. And he had told the world without shame or reservation. As she locked up the clinic, a familiar truck pulled into the parking lot. Lucas stepped out, looking tired and rumpled, nothing like the polished author from the television interview. "I thought you might need rescuing," he said, nodding toward the street where a van with a television station logo was slowly cruising by. Despite everything, Evelyn found herself smiling. "My hero?" "Hardly," Lucas grimaced. "I'm the one who caused this mess in the first place." "True," she agreed, but without heat. "Where were you thinking of rescuing me to?" "My editor rented me a cabin up at Crystal Lake. No one knows about it. Yet I thought maybe you might want some peace and quiet. We could talk or not talk, whatever you need." The offer was tempting. Escape from the prying eyes and curious questions. Time to sort through her jumbled feelings. But running away with Lucas would only feed the gossip mill. As if reading her thoughts, he added, "Separate cars, separate rooms. I just thought you might need somewhere to think that isn't surrounded by reporters. Let me grab some things from home first," she decided. "I'll meet you there in an hour." The cabin turned out to be a rustic but comfortable retreat nestled among pine trees with a deck overlooking the lake. By the time Evelyn arrived, Lucas had a fire going in the stone fireplace, and the smell of coffee filled the small living room. "Your publisher does this often? Rents hideaways for reluctant authors?" she asked, setting her overnight bag by the door. Lucas smiled ruefully. "First time, but I think they're worried I'll back out of the publicity tour if things get too overwhelming." "Would you?" He considered this as he handed her a mug of coffee, black with one sugar, just the way she liked it. "No, I made this choice. I'll see it through." He paused. "I'm sorry about the reporters, about all of it. I knew there would be attention, but I never expected this." Evelyn sank onto the couch, warming her hands on the mug. "Why did you do it, Lucas? Why reveal everything now?" He sat in the chair across from her, giving her space. "Because I was tired of living a divided life. Farmer by day, writer by night, never quite being honest about who I was." He looked down at his hands. "And because I wanted to be worthy of you." "Worthy?" she repeated, surprised. "What does that mean?" 5 years ago, when I first brought Daisy to your clinic, you were this force of nature, confident, brilliant. Everyone in town respected you. And I was just the sweet potato guy who could barely string 2 sentences together when you smiled at me." He shook his head. "I started writing the first book that night, giving myself on paper the courage I couldn't find in person." "But you are worthy," Evelyn protested. "You always have been. Your kindness, your talent, and the way you understand animals and people, the way you see beneath the surface, the way I see you," he said softly. "Yes." She set down her coffee, suddenly needing to move. She walked to the window, looking out at the lake shimmering in the moonlight. It's strange being known like that. Having someone see parts of yourself you thought you'd hidden away. "Too strange?" Lucas asked, not moving from his chair, still giving her the space she needed. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "I've been independent for so long, relying only on myself. The idea of letting someone in, of being vulnerable again." "I understand." His voice was gentle, without pressure. "That's why I've never pushed. Why I wrote books instead of asking you to dinner. I knew you needed time." Evelyn turned to look at him then, really look at him. Lucas Hale with his patient eyes and work-worn hands. The man who had loved her quietly, consistently, from a respectful distance, who had created beautiful stories that touched thousands of readers, all while growing sweet potatoes and helping neighbors deliver calves in the middle of the night. "You're not what I expected," she said finally. Lucas smiled, a small private smile. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. After David, I thought all men wanted the same thing. A woman who would put their needs first, who would shrink herself to fit their plans." "I fell in love with you because you would never shrink yourself for anyone," Lucas replied. "Your strength, your dedication to your work, they're not obstacles to love, Evelyn. They're the reasons for it." The simple truth of his words washed over her like a wave, sweeping away years of doubt and defenses. She moved back to the couch, sitting closer to him this time. "I read your book," she said. "All of it. And it was beautiful, hopeful, the way you write about love. It's not like the romance novels I swore off years ago. It's real, messy, difficult. Worth it, though," Lucas added, his eyes never leaving hers. "At least I've always thought so." Evelyn felt something shifting inside her, walls crumbling that had stood strong for 5 years. "The ending," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "In the book, they find their way to each other." "Fiction has that luxury," Lucas replied. "Real life is more complicated." "Is it?" She found herself moving closer, drawn to the quiet certainty in his eyes. "Maybe we make it complicated. Maybe sometimes the answer is simple, just terrifying." Lucas remained still, though she could see the hope building in his expression. "And what's the simple answer, Evelyn?" "That I might be falling in love with you too," she admitted, the words both frightening and freeing. "That maybe I have been for longer than I've let myself admit." The smile that spread across Lucas's face was like sunrise, slow, warm, illuminating. He reached out hesitantly and took her hand in his. "That's a good start," he said softly. They talked long into the night, not just about themselves, but about the storm of publicity surrounding them. Lucas explained the publishing schedule, the planned book tour, the meetings with film producers that his agent had arranged. "It's going to be a circus for a while," he warned. "Especially if we're together." "If?" Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "When?" he corrected, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "If you're willing to take that chance." "I'm willing to try," she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "But slowly. On our terms, not theirs." Lucas nodded, understanding, as always. "No interviews about us, no public statements, just you and me figuring things out in our own way." "Exactly." She squeezed his hand. "I'm not ready to be a character in someone else's story, not even yours." "Fair enough," he agreed. "Though you should know, you've never been just a character to me, Evelyn. You've always been the story itself." Late that night, after Lucas had retired to his room and Evelyn to hers, she stood by the window, looking out at the moonlight on the lake. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future, here with someone else in it. Not as a replacement for her dreams, but as a companion who understood and supported them. The thought was still frightening, but no longer paralyzing. They returned to Willow Creek the next day to find the media frenzy had intensified. Reporters camped outside both the clinic and Lucas's farm. Curious tourists wandered the town, hoping to catch a glimpse of the real-life couple from the most romantic book of the year. Lucas hired a publicist to handle the press, making it clear that his personal life was off-limits. Evelyn hung a "No Reporters" sign on the clinic door and buried herself in work, grateful for the familiar routine of caring for animals who didn't care about bestseller lists or movie deals. They met in the evenings, sometimes at her place, sometimes at his. Quiet dinners, walks with Daisy, conversations that stretched long into the night. Their relationship grew in these private moments, sheltered from the public eye that so desperately wanted to witness their love story. 2 weeks after the media storm began, Lucas had to leave for his book tour, a 10-city schedule that would keep him away for nearly a month. They stood on his porch the night before his departure, Evelyn leaning against the railing while Lucas checked his travel itinerary one last time. "New York, Chicago, Los Angeles," he read, shaking his head in disbelief. "How did a sweet potato farmer end up here?" "You're more than a farmer," Evelyn reminded him. "You always have been." He looked up at her, his expression suddenly vulnerable. "Will you be here when I get back?" The question carried weight beyond its simple words. He was asking if she would stay, not just physically, but emotionally. If she would still be willing to try this fragile new thing between them after weeks apart, with the complications of his newfound fame. Evelyn stepped closer, taking the itinerary from his hands and setting it aside. "I'll be here," she promised. "We have a story to finish, don't we?" Lucas's smile was worth every moment of doubt, every fear she had pushed through to reach this point. "We do." When he kissed her, it felt like the culmination of 1,000 unspoken words, 5 years of patient waiting, and the beginning of something neither of them had written yet. The book tour was harder than either of them had anticipated. Though they spoke every night, the distance and the constant public scrutiny of Lucas wore on them both. Evelyn watched clips of his interviews online, her heart aching at the sight of him answering the same questions over and over, with unfailing politeness, deflecting the personal queries with gentle firmness. "How's the sweet potato farmer handling fame?" she asked during one late-night call, trying to keep her tone light, though she could hear the exhaustion in his voice. "Ready to come home," Lucas admitted. "The publicist keeps telling me to smile more. Apparently I'm too serious for daytime television." Evelyn laughed, picturing his reserved expressions in the bright lights of TV studios. "They don't understand that's part of your charm." "My charm, huh?" She could hear the smile in his voice. "I miss you, Evelyn." "I miss you too," she replied, the words coming more easily now with practice. "The kittens are ready for adoption, by the way. Except for the orange one, I think he's chosen me. Rex won't mind the company. He's pretending to be annoyed, but I caught them sleeping together on the couch yesterday." These small domestic conversations anchored them through the separation, talk of animals and farms and the changing seasons in Willow Creek, plans for when Lucas returned, dreams shared in the safety of late-night phone calls when the rest of the world was asleep. By the 3rd week of the tour, Evelyn had grown accustomed to the reporters who still occasionally showed up at the clinic. She had even given a brief statement to the local paper, clarifying that while she was the inspiration for the book's heroine, the story itself was fiction. "Mostly," she had added, with an uncharacteristic smile that set the town gossips buzzing. For days, what she wasn't prepared for was meeting Rachel. The woman walked into the clinic on a Tuesday afternoon, stylish and confident in a way that immediately set Evelyn's teeth on edge. There was something familiar about her, though Evelyn was certain they had never met. "I need to see Dr. Hart," she told Maggie. "It's personal." Evelyn emerged from the back room, wiping her hands on a towel. "I'm Dr. Hart." The woman smiled, though. It didn't reach her eyes. "I thought so. I'm Rachel Crawford. Lucas and I were engaged once." Understanding dawned immediately. This was the woman who had mocked Lucas's writing, who had left him with wounds that had taken years to heal. Evelyn felt a surge of protectiveness that surprised her with its intensity. "What can I do for you, Miss Crawford?" she asked, keeping her tone professionally neutral. Rachel glanced around the small waiting room. "Could we talk privately?" Against her better judgment, Evelyn led her to the office, closing the door behind them. "I'll be direct," Rachel said, not bothering to sit. "I'm a producer with New Vision Studios now. We're very interested in the film rights to Lucas's book. All of his books, actually, but especially the latest one. You should talk to his agent about that. I've tried. They're entertaining other offers." Rachel's smile turned calculating. "I thought perhaps you might have some influence in the matter." Evelyn crossed her arms. "Why would I help you? Because I know Lucas better than anyone. I can make sure the film captures his vision properly." "You knew Lucas," Evelyn corrected, "years ago. The man who writes those books now, he's not the same person you left behind." Rachel's smile faltered. "He told you about us. Enough." A moment of tense silence passed between them, two women assessing each other across years of history neither had fully shared. "He's going to be very wealthy, you know," Rachel said finally. "The books were successful before, but now, with the publicity, the film deals, we're talking millions. Life-changing money. If you think Lucas cares about that, you really don't." "Know him at all," Evelyn replied. "And you do, after what, a few weeks of dating?" Rachel laughed, the sound brittle in the small office. "You're the flavor of the month, Dr. Hart. The convenient real-life ending to sell more books. Trust me, I've seen how this industry works. The word stung more than Evelyn wanted to admit, touching on insecurities she thought she had begun to overcome. Was she just a marketing ploy, a convenient real-world parallel to boost sales? No, she knew better, had seen the truth in Lucas's eyes, had read it in words written years before they had ever truly spoken. "I think we're done here," she said firmly, opening the office door. "If you want to discuss business with Lucas, contact his agent. And if you're hoping to use me to pressure him, don't." Rachel picked up her designer handbag, her composure regained. "You're making a mistake." "No," Evelyn replied with quiet certainty. "I think I'm finally getting something right." After Rachel left, Evelyn sat at her desk, turning the encounter over in her mind. She should call Lucas, warn him about his ex's appearance and her obvious agenda. But he was in the middle of a signing event in Seattle, and this wasn't news that should be delivered by phone. Instead, she made a decision that surprised even herself. She called the airline and booked a ticket to Los Angeles, Lucas's final stop on the tour, 3 days away. It was time to step out of the shadows, to stand beside him publicly as he had stood by her privately for years. It was time to write their own ending. Los Angeles was nothing like Willow Creek. The noise, the traffic, the sheer number of people left Evelyn feeling small and out of place as she navigated from the airport to the downtown hotel where Lucas was staying. She had texted him that morning with a simple message: "Taking a personal day. Don't worry about calling tonight." Giving no hint of her plans. Now standing in the gleaming hotel lobby in her travel-wrinkled clothes, she suddenly wondered if this impulsive trip had been a mistake. What if he was too busy? What if the surprise wasn't welcome? What if Rachel had already reached out to him? "Can I help you, ma'am?" the concierge asked, eyeing her worn jeans and sensible shoes with barely concealed judgment. "I'm here to see Lucas Hale," she said, lifting her chin with the confidence she used when dealing with difficult clients at the clinic. "He's expecting me." A small lie, but it worked. The concierge made a call, and minutes later, Evelyn was directed to the elevator that would take her to the executive suite on the top floor. Her heart pounded as she rode upward, rehearsing what she would say. But when the elevator doors opened directly into the suite's living room, all carefully prepared words fled her mind. Lucas stood by the window, his back to her, phone pressed to his ear. He was dressed more formally than she had ever seen him, dark slacks and a blue button-down shirt that someone else had clearly chosen for him. His hair was neatly trimmed, his usual stubble gone. He looked like the successful author. He was not the farmer in flannel she had come to love. For a moment, doubt crept in. Maybe Rachel was right. Maybe they were from different worlds after all. Then Lucas turned, sensing her presence, and his face transformed. The tired formality melted away, replaced by such naked joy that Evelyn's doubt vanished as quickly as it had come. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, not taking his eyes off her. He set it down and crossed the room in 4 long strides. "Evelyn," he breathed, as if her name itself was a relief. How did you—" "Surprise," she said, suddenly shy despite the weeks of late-night calls and growing intimacy. "I thought maybe you could use a friendly face." Instead of answering, he pulled her into an embrace so tight it lifted her off her feet. She could feel the tension leaving his body as he held her, his face buried in her hair. "You have no idea," he murmured. When he finally set her down, Evelyn noticed the dark circles under his eyes, the strain around his mouth that his smile couldn't quite hide. "That bad?" Lucas ran a hand through his hair, mussing its perfect styling. "It's not the interviews or the signings, those I can handle. It's everything else. The publicity team, the film producers, the agents and lawyers, and everyone wanting her piece." He stopped himself, shaking his head. "I'm sorry you came all this way and I'm complaining." "Don't apologize," she said, taking his hand and leading him to the couch. "Talk to me. Tell me everything." The walls he had maintained for the cameras came down as he described the exhausting reality behind the glamorous tour. The constant pressure to be on, the endless meetings with industry people who saw only dollar signs when they looked at him, the isolation of hotel rooms and airports. "I miss the farm," he admitted. "The quiet, the animals. Writing used to be my escape, and now it's this machine that I'm caught in. Can you say no, set boundaries?" I'm trying. He squeezed her hand gratefully. My agent says it will calm down after the tour, but there's also the movie deal to negotiate, and they want me to consult on the screenplay. And then there's the talk of a sequel. Do you want to write a sequel? Evelyn asked quietly. Lucas looked at her, really looked at her. I don't know. I wrote the words he never said as an ending, not a beginning. He paused. But maybe that's changed now. The moment hung between them, full of possibilities neither had fully voiced yet. Then Lucas smiled, the first genuine smile she had seen since arriving. But that's tomorrow's problem. Right now, I can't believe you're here. How long can you stay? Just until Sunday. The clinic needs me back on Monday. 3 days, he calculated. I have a signing tonight and a breakfast interview tomorrow, but I can reschedule everything else. Don't change your plans for me, Evelyn protested. I came to support you, not disrupt your schedule. Lucas shook his head firmly. The schedule can wait. This, you being here, is more important. As if on cue, his phone rang. He glanced at it with a grimace. My publicist. Again. Answer it, Evelyn encouraged. I'll be right here. The call was brief but tense. From Lucas's half of the conversation, Evelyn gathered that there was a last-minute invitation to a literary party that night, one the publicist thought was too valuable to pass up. No, Lucas said firmly. I already have plans tonight. Yes, I understand it's important, but no, this isn't negotiable. He ended the call with a sigh. She's not happy. What was that about? They want me at some industry party tonight, instead of the bookstore signing. Apparently, the producer of the last 3 Academy Award winners for Best Adapted Screenplay will be there. He sat beside Evelyn again. I told her no. Lucas, she began carefully, maybe you should go. It sounds important. He looked at her in surprise. You want me to go to a Hollywood party? I want you to do what's best for your career, she clarified. And I could go with you. His expression softened. You hate crowds and attention. I do, she acknowledged. But I didn't fly across the country to hide in a hotel room. And besides, she added with a small smile, I brought a dress, just in case. Just in case, he repeated, his eyes warm with understanding. Evelyn Hart, are you saying you want to be seen with me in public? She took a deep breath. I'm saying I'm tired of hiding, of pretending our relationship isn't happening because I'm afraid of what people might say or think. I'm saying... She met his gaze directly. I'm ready for our story to be real. Not just in private, but everywhere. The joy that spread across. Lucas's face made any anxiety about public appearances worth it. He cupped her cheek gently, his calloused farmer's hand incongruous against his polished author's appearance. Are you sure? Evelyn nodded. Call your publicist back. Tell her Thomas Wells and his muse will be attending tonight's party. The literary party was held at a rooftop venue overlooking the lights of Los Angeles. Evelyn wore the simple black dress she had packed, her one concession to the possibility of a fancy dinner, with her dark hair loose around her shoulders. As they stepped off the elevator, Lucas's hand warm at the small of her back, she fought the instinct to retreat. We can leave any time you want, he murmured, sensing her nervousness. Just say the word. But Evelyn was determined to see this through. For 5 years, she had kept people at a distance, protected herself from potential hurt by staying safely behind her professional walls. Tonight, she was choosing differently, choosing Lucas, choosing them. The publicist, a sharp-eyed woman named Danielle, met them at the entrance, her surprise at Evelyn's presence barely concealed beneath her professional smile. Dr. Hart, what an unexpected pleasure. She turned to Lucas with approval. This is perfect timing. Everyone's been dying to meet her. Evelyn is here as my guest, Lucas said firmly, not as a promotional tool. Danielle raised her hands in mock surrender. Of course, but you can't blame me for seeing the potential. The real-life couple behind the bestseller, it writes itself. Before either could respond, they were swept into the party. Evelyn had expected to feel out of place among the literary and film elite, but to her surprise, many of them approached her with genuine interest. They asked about her veterinary practice, about small-town life, about her reactions to Lucas's books. Were you angry when you found out? Asked a well-known actress who had apparently read all 6 novels. I would have been furious if someone had been secretly writing about me for years. Not angry, Evelyn replied thoughtfully. More unseen. In a way no one had bothered to see me before. The actress sighed dreamily. That's even more romantic than the book. Across the room, Lucas was deep in conversation with a serious-looking man Danielle had introduced as the producer they had been hoping to meet. Despite the important discussion, Lucas's eyes regularly sought out Evelyn, checking that she was comfortable, silently asking if she needed rescuing. She smiled, letting him know she was managing, and continued her own conversation with a literature professor who was analyzing the evolution of Lucas's writing style over his 6 novels. The evening progressed more pleasantly than she had anticipated until a familiar voice cut through the ambient noise of the party. Well, if it isn't the muse herself. Evelyn turned to find Rachel approaching, looking even more polished than she had at the clinic, her smile predatory beneath the glittering lights. "Ms. Crawford," Evelyn acknowledged coolly. "I didn't realize you'd be here." "I wouldn't miss it," Rachel replied, her gaze sliding past Evelyn to where Lucas stood. "He looks good, doesn't he? Success suits him better than flannel and dirt." Evelyn refused to take the bait. "Lucas would be the first to tell you he prefers the farm to all of this." Rachel laughed, the sound drawing attention from nearby guests. "That's his charm, isn't it? The humble farmer act. But trust me, no one writes books like his without ambition, without wanting recognition." "Or maybe," Evelyn countered quietly, "someone writes books like his because they have something important to say, because they see beauty in ordinary moments that others miss." Before Rachel could respond, Lucas appeared at Evelyn's side, his expression carefully neutral, though his eyes betrayed his surprise at seeing his ex. "Rachel," he said simply, "I didn't know you were in publishing now." "Production," she corrected with a bright smile. "New Vision Studios. We've been trying to reach your agent about the film rights to your books. All of them, actually, as a package deal." "Phil mentioned the offer," Lucas acknowledged, "but we've already entered preliminary discussions with Thompson Films." Rachel's smile tightened. "I'd urge you to reconsider. New Vision can offer a much more authentic adaptation. After all, who knows your vision better than someone who knew you before all this?" She gestured vaguely at the party, at his success. "That's just it," Lucas replied calmly. "You knew me before I found my voice, before I became the writer. I am now." He took Evelyn's hand. "Before I found what I was really writing about." The deliberate touch, the clear message it sent, made Rachel's expression harden. How sweet. The small-town couple against the big bad world. I wonder how long? That will last once the real offers start coming in. "I think we're done here," Evelyn said firmly. "Enjoy the party, Ms. Crawford." As they walked away, Lucas squeezed her hand gratefully. "Thank you." "For what?" "For defending me, for being here, for everything." Evelyn smiled up at him. "That's what partners do, isn't it?" The word hung between them, significant and new. Partners, not just characters in a story, but 2 people choosing each other, supporting each other through whatever came next. They stayed another hour, making connections, having conversations that might or might not shape Lucas's literary future. But unlike before, he didn't seem overwhelmed by it all. With Evelyn beside him, the chaos of this new world seemed manageable. Later, back in the quiet of the hotel suite, they sat on the balcony overlooking the city lights, a bottle of champagne open between them. "Did you mean it?" Lucas asked, breaking a comfortable silence. "About being partners?" Evelyn nodded, surprised by how certain she felt. "I did. If that's what you want too." "It's all I've wanted for 5 years," he said softly. "But I need you to know. This," he gestured toward the glittering city, "the parties, the publicity, the film deals, none of it matters to me. Not compared to you, not compared to our life in Willow Creek." "Our life," she repeated, testing the words. I liked the sound of that. Lucas reached for her hand, his expression serious. "I meant what I told Rachel. You're what I've been writing about all along. The dream of you at first. And now, the reality. which is better than anything I could have imagined. Even though I'm stubborn, Evelyn teased gently. Even though I'm still learning how to let someone in. Especially because of those things, he assured her. I don't want perfect, Evelyn. I just want real. I want you. She leaned over and kissed him then, a silent promise. When they separated, she smiled. I think I might be falling in love with the sweet potato guy after all. His answering smile was like sunrise. And I've been in love with the tough veterinarian since the day she fixed my dog's paw and didn't suffer fools. They spent the next 2 days exploring Los Angeles together, Lucas rescheduling all but the most essential publicity events. They walked on the beach, ate at tiny restaurants far from the celebrity hotspots, and talked for hours about everything and nothing. His writing process, her most challenging cases, their childhood dreams, their adult realities. On their last night before Evelyn had to return to Willow Creek, Lucas took her to dinner at a quiet restaurant overlooking the ocean. As they finished dessert, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. What's this? She asked, taking it curiously. Open it. Inside was a simple key on a handmade leather keychain stamped with a paw print. A key to your house? Evelyn guessed. Lucas nodded. And to the farm. To my life. He paused, suddenly looking nervous despite all they had shared. I know it's soon and we're still figuring things out, but I wanted you to know that whatever happens with the books or the movies or any of it, my home is your home, whenever you want it to be. Evelyn turned the key over in her palm, feeling its weight, the commitment it represented. 5 weeks ago, such a gesture would have sent her running. Now it felt right, not frightening, but like a door opening to a future she actually wanted to step into. I don't have a key for you, she said finally. Lucas's face fell slightly, though he tried to hide it. That's okay, there's no rush. But, she continued, cutting him off gently, I do have a proposal. His eyebrows rose in surprise. A proposal? Your farmhouse is bigger than my place, she said practically, and Daisy gets along with Rex now. And there's that extra room that could make a good home office for your writing. She took a deep breath. What would you think about me moving in? Not right away, but soon. The joy that spread across Lucas's face was all the answer she needed. Returning to Willow Creek after the whirlwind of Los Angeles felt like coming up for air after being underwater. The familiar streets, the clinic, the rhythm of small-town life, all of it welcomed Evelyn home with open arms. The media storm had begun to die down in her absence. There were still occasional reporters or curious tourists, but the frenzy had largely moved on to newer stories. Lucas returned the following week, immediately diving back into farm work as if to ground himself after the surreal experience of the book tour. They settled into a new routine. Dinner together most nights, weekends spent between his farm and her house. As they slowly began the process of combining their lives, Lucas set up a dedicated writing space in what had been his grandmother's sewing room, a sunny corner, with views of the fields where he could work on his new novel. Is it about us again? Evelyn had asked teasingly when he first showed her the barely started manuscript. No, he'd replied seriously. This one's different, a new story. She had understood without him having to explain further. Their story, the one that had spanned 6 novels and 5 years of silent love, had reached its conclusion. What came next would be lived, not written. 3 months after their return from Los Angeles, on a crisp autumn evening, much like the one when they had delivered the calf together, Lucas took Evelyn to the highest point on his farm. A checkered blanket was spread beneath an old oak tree, a picnic basket waiting. What's the occasion? She asked as they settled on the blanket, Daisy circling them before flopping down contentedly at their feet. The movie deal is official, Lucas told her, pulling a bottle of champagne from the basket. Thompson Films signed the contract yesterday. They want to start filming next spring. Lucas, that's wonderful, Evelyn exclaimed. Why didn't you tell me right away? He smiled, pouring 2 glasses. Because I wanted to celebrate properly, and because there's more news. She accepted the glass, eyeing him curiously. More news? They want to film here, in Willow Creek. using the real locations that inspired the book. He looked out over his fields, golden in the setting sun. They want to use the farm for some scenes. How do you feel about that? Evelyn asked carefully, knowing how private he had always been about his writing, about his home. Lucas considered the question. I think I'm okay with it. Sharing our story, the real one, with the world. He turned to her. But only if you are. They'll want to talk to you too, get your input on the character. The character, Evelyn repeated with a small smile. You mean me? A version of you, he corrected. The one I saw before I really knew you. Before we wrote this part of the story together. She sipped her champagne, contemplating the strange journey that had brought them here. From cautious veterinarian and quiet farmer to lovers whose story would soon be told on movie screens around the world. Life is unpredictable, she mused. 5 years ago I swore I'd never fall in love again, and now look at us. Lucas reached for her hand, his thumb brushing over her knuckles in the gentle way that had become so familiar. Are you happy, Evelyn, with how our story turned out? She looked at him, Lucas Hale, the sweet potato farmer who wrote best-selling romance novels, who had loved her quietly and completely for years, who had finally found the courage to speak the words he had only written before. The man who saw her strength as a gift rather than a challenge, who understood her independence because he valued his own, who had waited patiently until she was ready to let him in. It's not over yet, she reminded him, leaning forward to kiss him softly. But so far, it's better than anything I could have written myself. As the sun set over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the fields that Lucas had farmed his whole life, they talked about the future, their future, the farm, the clinic, the books he would write, the animals she would heal, the life they would build together one day at a time, not a fairy tale, but something better, something real. And if, in the quiet moments between conversations, Lucas seemed nervous, his hand straying repeatedly to his pocket, where a small velvet box waited for the perfect moment, well, that was a chapter for another day. One they would write together in their own time, in their own way. After all, the best stories, the true ones, were never really finished. They just turned the page to a new beginning. The end.